YouTube, Timothy Unger here. In this video, I'm going to show you how I'm making an infinite do now. We're doing one here where I'm going to evaluate f of x given a value of x. So the first thing I'm going to do is I created a file. It's called evaluating f of x.html. And I'm in VS Code. And what I can do here is do an exclamation point and hit tab. And then it gives me a basic framework. And then I can tab through here and then title it. So let's just call this evaluating f of x. Okay, tab down here, and I'm going to want to create a container so I can get a good margin on the sides of my paper if I were going to print this to PDF. So I'm just going to call this class container. You can call it whatever you want. So you do dot container and hit tab, and that's going to give you a class of container, a div with the class of container, and we're going to style that with CSS later on. Inside of that, I'm going to have 8 divs with the class of row. So I'm going to do dot row and do asterisk 8, so dot row times 8. And inside of each of those, I'm going to have a second level heading and a paragraph. And I'm going to hit tab, and VS Code here is going to generate all that code for me. So now I'm going to go down to the bottom here, right above the closing body tag, and I'm going to type script and hit tab, and that's going to give me an opening and closing script tag. And inside of there, that's where I can write some JavaScript. So I'm going to start with a for loop. I'm going to say for, and I'll do let I equal 0, a semicolon, then I is less than 8, another semicolon, then I plus plus. And what that does is this for loop runs, it starts with I is 0, and it runs as long as I is less than 8, and it increments one time each time through the loop. It increments I. And then we have these curly braces here, and inside of the curly braces is where I can write my JavaScript code. So the first thing I want to do is populate the headings. So I'm going to create a variable. It's a constant, meaning I can't change the value of the variable once I create it. So I'm going to do const, and then I'll create the name. And I'm going to call this problem, and then heading. And you'll notice that I'm doing this in camel case. So the first word is lowercase, and then every word after that is uppercase. Starts with an uppercase letter. Okay, so I'm going to type in document, and then query, and it's giving me the option here. I'm going to select query selector all. So that's going to select all of what I want to select, which I want to go into the .row class and select the H2, the second level heading. And I'm going to select that at index I. So that's going to give me an array of headings, right? So it's going to give me the first heading through the 8th heading. Now the first heading in an array, or the first item in an array has an index of 0. So in programming, it starts with index of 0. So I'm going up, starting at 0 here, and then I'm adding 1 each time through the loop up to 7, which will be the 8th heading. Okay, so now that I've created that variable, I'm going to type the variable, and I'm going to do dot text content, set that equal to, and I'm going to do backticks here, meaning I can pass in a variable into this string. So I'm going to type in problem, and I'll do a $ and curly braces. And now I can pass in I plus 1. And so that's going to label each problem 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up to 8. I'm going to save this, and if I go to a browser here, and I do Control O, and I select the file, I can then open the file, and I see that the JavaScript is now populating the headings, which is good. Okay, we want to maybe work on the style here a little bit. So let's go up to the top here, right under the title. I'm going to type in style, hit tab. In that, I'm going to create some styling for the container class. I do that by typing dot container, and then inside the curly braces, I can give a style. So I'm going to do margin 0 on top and bottom, but a ½ inch on the left and right. And now if I save that and I refresh in the browser, you'll see it gives that ½ inch and moves them in. Next thing I'm going to do is target each of the rows. So I'm going to do dot row, and I'll give it a min height of, let's say, 175 pixels. And I'm going to give it a border dash bottom of, let's do 5 pixels dotted, and let's do hot pink. Okay, I'll save that, and then now you notice that these space out now. It's getting nice. So you can print this out and cut these into strips for do nows along the pink dotted line. Okay, another thing I might want to do is create a class called .pb, and just type in page break after always, and do a semicolon at the end of that. And what that'll do is if I put that in, I don't know, let's say I go after the end of this row and do .pb and hit tab. Now I've got that in there. So that's going to put the next rows on a separate page. So if I refresh here and go to print, now you see that, okay, so I probably should have done it one above because now problem 5 is still going over this page. So let me fix that. So all I need to do, if I hold down the Alt, I can move this up. And I just move it up to the next one, save the file, and refresh here. And now when I print, it's going to go through problem 4 and then break evenly into problem 5 and 6, 7, 8. So that's some good formatting there. Okay, so now that we're done with the styling, let's focus on creating the actual problem. So I'm going to create another variable. We'll call it problem paragraph, and that'll target the paragraph of the problem, and that'll be equal to document.query selector all. So this is bringing back an array again, and we'll do inside the row class, we'll do the paragraphs at index I. We're ending each of these with a semicolon, although nowadays you don't really need to do that, but just being consistent. Okay, so now I want to create a function. So I'm going to go outside of this for loop, right below the opening script tag, and I'll say something like let, and we'll call it create problem. It'll be an arrow function. So it equals this open parentheses here, and we do this equals in the right bracket there to create an arrow. And we're going to want to return the problem. But we got to have what we're bringing into the problem here. So we're going to have probably a variable for the first coefficient, a variable for the constant, maybe a sign, and then an x value. So let's do that. So let's do first coefficient. We'll want to have that. We also want to have the lone constant. We also want to have the x value, and we also want to have the sign of the operation. Okay. And when we get all that, we can now return a template literal here. That's those backticks, meaning I can pass in variables. So I can say the function f of x equals, and we're going to do, now we'll pass in the first coefficient. I do that with the $sign and the curly braces. So I start to type out some of that, and I can hit tab to autocomplete that. So we can do x, and then we want to do the sign of the operation here. So whether it's plus or minus, and then we'll do also the lone constant. Okay, and we just do some wrap here, and let's say when x equals, and we'll pass in the x value. Okay, so that's going to create the problem, but now we have to create all of those variables. So what I can do is I can go down here, let's make a comment that we're going to create the variables for the do now. Okay, so I'm going to do const, and let's not name them exactly the same. So let's do coef1, and that'll be equal to math.floor, so that'll round it down. And then we'll do math.random. That'll give me a number between 0 and 1. And we want to multiply that by, let's say if we multiply it by 8, this is going to give me a number between 0 and 7 because I'm using math.floor, and I'll add 2. So now this is a number between 2 and 9. Okay, and I'm going to duplicate this down. You see VS Code is giving me some red squiggly marks here saying, hey, you can't name all these variables the same thing. So let's call this one lone const, and let's call this one x value. And this next one I'm going to call sign decider. And I'm going to set it, multiply this times 2 and have it's not going to add anything to the end of this. So it's going to give me another number, either 0 or 1. And then we'll have, we'll create the sign variable. It's called the sign. And we'll just declare it, but we won't assign it yet. And then we'll say if sign decider triple equals 0, then we'll say the sign equals, let's do a plus sign here. And then we'll do an else the sign equals a minus sign here. Okay. All right, so now what we need to do is we need to call this function and set it equal to the text content of the problem paragraph. So what I'm going to do is do problem. I'll start to type it up and select it, problem paragraph dot text content equals, and we'll do create problem. And we want to pass in the first coefficient, so that's going to be coef1, the lone constant, which is lone const, then the x value, let's call this xval. We don't want to mirror it in the function. So let's do xval here, xval, and then we'll do the sign, okay? And get rid of that and save it. And now let's see where we're at. So now if I refresh, okay, so now we've got the problem. Let's zoom in a little bit. Okay, so now we got the function f of x equals 9x plus 2 when x equals 6. So I got to work on what this actual problem says. So let's say, okay, let's go up to the function here. And then we'll do a comma and say, what is the value of f of x when x equals the x value? So now, okay, so now we have the function f of x equals 8x minus 8. What is the value of f of x when x equals 2? We refresh it, we just keep getting new problems here. So there we go. We've pretty much just created our infinite do now. Now we could calculate out the solutions. We could create another function for that, but unfortunately, my lunch is about to end and I have to stop the video. So that's all there is to it. Hopefully this video was helpful to you. If it was, please give it a like and consider subscribing to the channel. Hope to see you in the next one. Have a great day.